All right, hello everyone, and welcome to the January Kingfield Neighborhood Association Board meeting. Thank you, Sarah Cheetah. Sarah just put the agenda in the chat. And for those of you who just joined, we are going to have a shortened agenda tonight. Chris DeRoche apologizes. He had family situation come up and he will not be able to be here tonight, so I will be chairing the meeting in his absence. With this absence, we're going to be adjusting the agenda a little bit. The Kfna procedure on taking a policy will be moved to February's board meeting so that Chris can be here to join us. He did a lot of the heavy lifting on that particular agenda item, and we want him to be here to be presenting that. And Alice was also not able to be present tonight, but she had a previous engagement, but she did help SLR with the budget conversation, which will be coming up in a minute. As always, we start the meeting with a community forum, an opportunity for neighbors to talk about what's happening in the community. Looks like we have no visitors tonight, but as a reminder, board members are also neighbors and so can always speak during the community forum. So does anyone have any topics to bring up in the community forum? Hearing none, I will officially call the meeting to order and ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda, which includes the minutes from last month's meeting and the agenda for tonight's meeting.
So moved.
Can I get a second? Thank you. Todd for the motion and Dave Searle for the second. Any discussion? Seeing none, can I get a thumbs up, a yes in the chat, or a verbal yes to approve the consent agenda? All right, any opposed? And any abstentions? Perfect. The first agenda item is a year-to-date budget report from SLR.
Thank you. So I put the link in the chat that's to the finance section of the packet. Hopefully all of you had a chance to look through this. I am going to walk through these documents in a certain order, hoping that it helps everyone sort of see the story that we're telling and the future that Kfna is facing financially. So if you go to this link, please begin by opening the budget versus actual Q2 report. And just so people are aware, I'm happy to take questions during this, but I'm also on my screen, which means I'm not seeing you. So just don't raise a hand or just yell. How about that? Because I can't make eye contact with anyone. So this is the typical report that's provided on a quarterly basis. Let me just make sure I'm back here for a sec. Is everyone have this document open? Heads. Okay, why doesn't everyone go off mute just so I can hear you if you're talking? That will help me. As I said, I'm not watching. Okay. Thank you. Okay, so this is a typical report that we see, budget versus actual Q2. So as a reminder, our fiscal year begins June 1st. So second quarter ends at the end of November. The beginning of this is the revenue or the money that has come in to KFNA, and the bottom section is the expenditures. So there is a column over to the right that I added to show dollars in December. I had a feeling that people would be somewhat concerned to see that our actual dollar amount in was $46,000 compared to our estimated $182,000. So because our direct mail fundraiser was in December, because we got a large payment from the Lindale Neighborhood Association, and because we filed our CPP reports and got income this year for the money spent from the city, a lot of that money comes in now. So you can see that our budget in is pretty healthy. At this halfway point of the year, we would hope that we'd be about halfway done on expenses and also halfway through with our revenue, which is not a totally accurate picture, but a pretty close approximation. So you can see that most of our expenses are half of budget, or close to half of budget, with a few exceptions of things that didn't happen. I do want to point out that staff wages are lower than we had budgeted for. This in part was because Kenzie did not join staff until September, and we were hoping that we would be hiring in June. So that accounts for part of that. If you scroll down to the bottom of the report, I do want you to see boxed in red here that total expenditures for the organization for half the year are still at $53,000. And why this is important is even on a reduced capacity, because of Kenzie not being present this whole time, it means that Kfna is easily a $100,000 organization. And if, as we look at the other reports, we'll see that we do not have $100,000 of income coming each year. So before I move off this, are there questions on this document? Okay, hearing none, if you go back to the list of financial reports and open the Q2 pie chart. And if someone can't find this, please just holler. Is everyone looking at it? Remember, I can't see you. Everyone.
My computer is pretty slow opening these things right now for some reason, but I am on my way, so just proceed.
Okay, cool. This is a report that I really like that we do on the quarterly basis, and basically it shows the allocation of staff time per category. So you can see that we have a good balance between administration, communications, and project work, and a fair amount of development work going on right now. Development meaning fundraising. And then you can see both Kenzie's and my actual hours. I will remind you that I have been working from June through November solidly, and Kenzie just started in September, which accounts for some of the discrepancies in hours. Somewhat, but not completely. And so this is something that we really do want to pay attention to moving forward. Okay, questions on allocations?
Doesn't look like there's any questions.
Great, thank you. Okay, so back to the list, please, and open the yeah, I don't even want to do that one. The Kfna financial snapshot. So this is a picture that most of you probably do want to see. And this is really like a January 1st picture of where Kfna stands financially. So you can see that, oh, it's not January 1st. Our checking and savings account are roughly the same as they were on November 30th, the dollars in here. And then the committed funding that we have for 2022, it's highlighted in the yellow right here. And then this funding is all committed. And I highlighted it because even though this is committed for 2022, most of this funding will not be available to the neighborhood association, or will not be this high, especially the equity engagement and neighborhood networking funds in 2023. So you could look at the total available dollars, whoops, sorry, available spelled wrong, and go, yay, Kfna has 3 years of operating. But really, this entire pot of funds right here, it won't be there beyond this year. So then the important point of this page is to look down under contracted dollars, and we have 3 active NRP strategies. They're listed by their contract numbers, 14923, 24718, and 25257. And the dollar amount remaining after expenses for the year have been applied for and reimbursed by the city. The remaining funding amount is shown on this document, as are Kingfield's uncontracted dollars, which at this point are all allocated to affordable housing. So it's a significant amount of money. It's a couple years of operating, but I believe that this board will face a decision about if they want to take money from contracted projects or from uncontracted dollars to keep the organization going, or what that scenario is. So if we look back up into committed, once the cash is gone, the cash is gone. And then really for committed resources for the future years of KFNA, it's about $19,500 from the city of Minneapolis. Kingfield is not a $19,000, 500 a year organization. Okay, questions? So I guess I'll just close out the budget report with the fundraising committee is aware of how serious this is. I would say they're not at the point of having a plan, a strategic plan of raising $100,000 a year. It's a steep ask. We recently submitted a grant in cooperation with Lindale. I put that application in the project. There's a number of other grants I'm looking at, but I do want to make the neighborhood association aware that currently the dollars in grant money that are available to Kingfield often cost exactly what the grantor's willing to provide, meaning we're not getting general operating grant dollars. That's not the mission statement. That's not the direction that the organization is working. So often when we get a grant for something like pop-off projects along Nicollet Avenue to create, investment and identity along the avenue, it costs us every single penny of staff dollars to do that new project that we get through that grant. There's another project coming up that's really interesting for creating pollinator pathways for the rusty bumblebee through the city. I would say we have a great chance of getting it, but it also will, if we get it, it will be a significant investment of staff time to develop a new project and implement a new project. So I don't have a solution at this point other than keep trying to hone the mission statement, define the goals of the organization, and really sell that to the community enough that there's investment from neighbors in KFNA. Because I would say that the days of having the staffing model that KFNA has had probably have a year or two left, and that's it.
Any questions from anyone to Sarah about the budget and where things lie?
I have a question. Excuse me. Sarah, you had mentioned just this board having a decision And I'm wondering, are you referring, I mean, yes, I understand like the bigger picture funding questions that we have to tackle going forward. But last year at the annual meeting, we had to put to a vote moving funds away from, I think it was the uncontracted affordable housing line. Are you saying that we're going to have to go and do something like that again, basically move funds from one account into general operating expenses for this next year?
I would say that that would likely be a regular task that the board will have to do if something else isn't figured out. You know, so the thing, what can be figured out? A huge fundraiser, a different staffing model, a different organizational model that reduces overhead, the moving of funds, you know, the implementation of all projects only by volunteers. I mean, there's a couple of different options, but as we closed out the year and this year, I'm pretty sure all of you are aware that Kingfield's annual allocation dropped this year from a roughly $55,000 commitment to $45,000. And so that meant we were tapping into NRP reserves, contract 25257 personnel, beginning in October. And the burden has been somewhat relieved this year by the contract with the Lyndale Neighborhood Association that's contracting with my time, but that also has an end date. Currently it's June. And so that's something else that could be looked at as an option. You know, are there other ways to bring in revenue through the organization?
Maybe I'm remembering this wrong, so other folks please chime in. But I remember during our earlier, like months ago now, discussions around the change of funding model from the city, that the amount of sort of guaranteed funds was going down. However, there were other pots of money from the city that were available. Sarah, you mentioned grants that were being applied for or in the process of. Is that what you're talking about? Are we sort of putting ourselves in the running for that money? Is that money general operating money, or is that also just project based?
So one of those pots of funds is called a collaboration fund, and Kingfield and Lyndale, because you had to apply with a partner, actually applied for it this year and received the grant for $15,000. That's itemized in the committed funds. That's how Kfna is supporting Kenzie's work in Kingfield this year. So it was written for an equity and justice organizer. There's another pot of funds called partnership funds. Kingfield spoke with a number of partners. None of them ended up applying, which doesn't mean that they won't apply this year. But with Lyndale, we applied for 4 projects and received 3 of them. And I would say that the bill of sales sold by the city of Minneapolis about what these partnership funds would do was an overstatement of how they would be supporting neighborhoods through this work and how partnerships would be built. So partnership funds are really designed to support other organizations, and neighborhoods are asked to front the admin for the partnerships.
So this is just a thought. I'm sure it's not a new thought, but I'm curious to see if others have thought through this and had discussions like this. But I know that the funding model change didn't affect all neighborhood associations equally. But I imagine that there are other neighborhood associations that are feeling this kind of squeeze or having this kind of conversation and have come to different conclusions about what their future might look like. I would just be curious to know, or to have some of those conversations, or to see what the results of those conversations have been, as organizations can continue to meet and figure that stuff out. Where are they landing? Perhaps Kingfield is in a unique pinch, but I don't know. There's a lot of neighborhood associations in the city.
I would say Kingfield's in a really unique spot in the city that got pinched harder. And I haven't spoken with every neighborhood in the city, but I've looked at their budgets, and I mostly know Southwest and South Central the best. But many neighborhoods to the south of Kingfield were already in a tight spot and have been existing on budgets of $20,000 a year. So for them to continue at $20,000 a year just means that they've already made the cuts or are doing the type of work that they felt they could do. I actually don't know if any neighborhood got hit as hard as Kingfield at a 60% reduction of funding. So I think it was just the unique place where we fell in the stream of the neighborhood and changes that we'd seen in the demographics of Kingfield since the last time the funding model was run 10 years ago, or the different things that played into it. As neighborhood organizers, we talk a lot about, what are you doing? What are you talking about? What is your board saying? What's the future? Who's merging? Who's doing what? I would say I haven't seen anyone take the leap yet. And I think in part because the work to do that, it's just extra work.
You mean the leap to merge?
The leap to merge, or, do more than work together. I would say the relationship between Kingfield and Lindale is the closest working relationship I've seen. Though we're doing more partnership work with Central, and we're doing more partnership work, with Bryant, and but I would say the merger conversation, which I think is a pretty clear signal from the city of what they're looking for. Most neighborhoods are just kind of avoiding talking about it because it's a
Sarah,
huge conversation.
when did the other, I know that, for example, in the Longfellow area, they have kind of a combined 4 neighborhood council. And Josh, I think you, in our strategic planning meeting, you mentioned a couple others. Do you know when those happened? Were those recent
No.
mergers, or did they happen 20 years ago and they just never had their own entity?
Yep. They have been that way forever. Field Regina Northrop, the Longfellow Nokomis area. Yeah, they've been that way a long time.
What's happening in the strategic planning sessions? Can anybody bring me up to speed?
I think Katie's going to talk about that during the committee updates.
Okay.
I'll just briefly add, I think to Jerome's question, Sarah, correct me if I'm wrong, but the Equitable Engagement Fund is one of those new distinct pots of money from the city, which Kfna did apply for and did receive.
Correct. So that's part of, it's rolled up in that contract number of the commitment for next year at 28.5. So if you really look at that breakout, 8,500 is Kingfield's Equitable Engagement funding, ongoing. And the remainder of that is something called the Neighborhood Network Fund, and they're contracted together. The Neighborhood Network Fund was supposed to be $15,000 this year, and in the budget process, Cam Gordon added $5,000 to each neighborhood. So for 1 year only. So the base funding this year is 20. Next year, that base funding will be 10, unless something else happens. So, I mean, to Todd's question, I think it does, part of this does, it comes down to all these committees. You know, part of this comes down to strategic planning, you know, what type of organization does KFNA want to be? And then financially, what type of organization can KFNA be sustainably? Which goes with recruitment, which goes with fundraising.
Other budget questions for Sarah?
Super somber report.
Yeah, indeed. And Sarah, we're going to move into the organizer contract amendment.
Yep. So the good news is because of so Kenzie's been working with the organization since September. She shares her time between Lindale and Kingfield. About 60 to 65 hours per month of her time is spent in Kingfield. So the bulk of her time is spent on Lindale, which is a financial arrangement. And her contract was written through December 15th, basically her probation period. So the amendment that is in your packet is to continue her contract through the coming year. It will be paid for by the Equitable Engagement Funds, the grant funding that Kingfield just got notice that they were approved for from the city of Minneapolis, and it will be paid through the collaboration fund, which was applied for with both neighborhoods. The cost of her time for the year will be roughly $15,000. At the wage, we pay a flat fee to the Lindale Neighborhood Association for her work. So what I would look for is a motion on the amendment to her contract, which specifies the monthly rate and the time period of January 18th through December 31st, 2022.
So moved.
Thank you, David. Can we get a second?
Second.
Thank you, L'Oreal. Any discussion? Hearing none, either give me a thumbs up, yes in the chat, or a verbal if you are in favor. Okay, and opposed? And any abstentions? All right, great. Thank you very much. Kenzie's contract amendment is approved. And we will move into the next section, which is a community safety update.
I put a handout in your guys' packet. And this came out of the last executive committee conversation about the grant that we had applied for. So we had applied for the trauma resiliency public safety grant, and we're not selected as a neighborhood to receive that. And as we were discussing that in the executive committee, the question sort of came up of like, what are we going to do about public safety? These are honestly the ideas that I've been kicking around. So I wanted the board to talk about them, see which of those resonate with them, which ones have energy behind, and and which ones you want to pursue. Again, knowing how short we are on resources, it would be tough if all of these projects were completely staff-driven and staff-led, and that's probably not the idea behind a public safety project anyways. but both Kenzie and I are prepared to work on these to the degree that there aren't volunteers to do the work, if this is a direction that the board wants to take, or however you want to move these forward, whether we look for task forces or steering committees, or if individual board members want to take on various projects. Did everyone find the document?
Yep, I have it.
Cool. Someone want to read them off for me, because I don't have it open.
I can read them.
That would be great.
Do you want me to just do them separate, like read each one?
I would
separate?
read them separate. To me, they're all sort of standalone projects that the board could be like, yeah, we love that, or like, no, we don't want to do that, you know?
Yeah, okay. Number 1, create a list of all the actions that various city departments are doing in regards to equity and safety. The show they are trying to find new methods of creating a safer city for all, not just investing in police. Why? Different departments are trying new things and showing that police are not the answer to everything. We should highlight this work. Oh, I thought we were.
You want to
discussing-
keep reading through them?
Yeah.
Let's just
Create a zine of what to do in certain situations. Look at Reclaim the Block, Anarchist and Activist Guides the SLR has, and CCP Safe's Old Block Organizing Materials. Create a new booklet, zine, pamphlet that updates the info from For Every Problem, Call 911, to outlining what else you can do and who else you can call, or how to report various concerns or crimes. Why? The answer used to be call 911, but options need to change and people need to be aware of what they are. 3, build out block networks and block contacts. Why? Our current block contact list was built at the start of COVID and was a communication network to make sure all neighbors were looked after. When we email this group to be active, we get very little response. We need to reach out to current block contacts and have a conversation about how they want to be involved. And if they aren't interested in being active in projects, we need to thank them and ask for their help to find someone on their block that is interested. 4, 100 Days of Community, AKA Butter from last year, or Allah Butter from last year. Get Dan's list and see what we can support and how we can support him in being the hub of this action. Why? This was a beautiful and visible project in Butter's windows. How can we build on this?
Yeah, so just to repeat, these are the ideas that have been kicking around in my head. I don't know if there's any that individuals want to take on, or that the board wants staff to push out to the neighborhood and see how we can organize that way also.
I might have a silly question, but what is a zine?
To me, this actually came out of last year's project, I think. To me, a zine, there's a lot of multi-paged, illustrated pamphlets, you often hand-drawn, that I've seen them for like public safety, I've seen them for like first aid, on the street types of stuff. So it's more accessible artwork and messaging. As a community.
Like a physical thing that you
like a
hold?
little magazine, basically.
Okay.
So is your question sort of like, as a board, what is our feeling of what is most important on this list and our own interest? So like direction to staff, but then interest any of us have?
That's my question. Like, is there enough interest in any of these that there are people who are like, I want this to be my project? Or is there enough interest where like, this is a really good idea, we should be doing this? We, the collective we. And so staff go figure out how to do it or do it.
I'm interested in the block captain thing. at least because it ties to fundraising. And I think there's an opportunity there. And so I don't know what anybody else thinks about it. I haven't thought about how to build it out. I haven't talked to Sarah about how it's worked, but I think it's critical we keep it in place and it keeps people engaged. And so I need to think about it, but I don't know if anybody else thinks about it, but I think it ties to fundraising and I think we have to do it.
Yeah, I strongly agree, and especially would want to encourage like whatever staff capacity can go to helping cultivate those relationships, because of the way that that brings some just added time, capacity, and like longevity to them. As a part of the group who did the 100 Days of Community and other community safety stuff last winter, it was just so clear that group wanted engagement, direction. I'm not surprised to see written that if they get an email, there's not response. People tend to need to like actually be engaged, and there needs to be a relationship there. But it just, I mean, we're all struggling a lot this deep into COVID and for so many reasons. So the fact that that would be different this winter than last winter also doesn't surprise me, but I just think it's for community safety, for so many reasons, like just so valuable to be investing in those relationships. And I think there's probably a lot we have to learn from what people want, by being more deeply in relationship with people in that way outside of just the board.
I agree that seems really foundational, the block contacts. And I also think about how that aligns with the equitable engagement funds that we have received from the city, and really trying to be clear and strategic and set goals and action plan for, if Kenzie's salary is coming out of those funds, and we know we need to do outreach, then what is the plan to cultivate those relationships with block contacts, and to look at places in our neighborhood where we know we don't have a block contact currently? Because if we look at those places, or if we look at where we're missing an opportunity to have a block contact, I think a lot of times we see that it's say blocks of Nicollet where there's a lot of apartment buildings and people who rent. And so we know that is a group that we're missing. And so how can we perhaps start there, and make sure that we're thinking about how to equitably engage people in our neighborhood?
One thing I'm thinking of in terms of making sure we get these block contacts more engaged is, I wonder, if we like assign blocks to different board members, like a set number of blocks, and have that board member responsible for interacting with the block contacts for those blocks, or recruiting block contacts for those blocks. And then that might be a little more manageable in terms of providing direction, because there's like 100 blocks. So theoretically, if we found a block contact for every block, that would be 100 people to manage, which is probably not feasible for any one person. But if you divide that up over 10 people, then that's only 10 people for each person to communicate with.
Yeah, I mean, fundraising's been talking about doing this block captain, kind of project. And so, I mean, I'm all about figuring this out, but I also think we ought to think about, especially as new buildings come into the market, these larger buildings, I'd like to think about building contacts, and so I think we have to leverage those renters that are in those buildings that, and then also the landlords. And so I've been thinking about that strategy too. But so both of those, and I'm all about this. Let's figure it out. How do you see this moving forward, Sarah? With a subcommittee, or how do you see these projects?
I guess I'm interested in exploring more what Josh is talking. So where I've been struggling is if so we have 60 people on our list. Okay, our block contacts, our active block contacts, newly recruited from last year, most of whom I know. If you send these people an email and you're like, do you want to do ABC? And there's no, like, I don't know how in this world of COVID to actually engage better, you know, or differently. And so to me, that's really the question is, could a board member, you know, I guess I'm going back to Katie's point. If they don't answer email because they're overwhelmed, then they're not answering email. But, you know, obviously no one's going to answer the door right now either. So I guess other ideas for connecting, you know, and so maybe it would be having board members adopt sections and actually do handwritten notes on people's doors. I don't know. I mean, how, if people aren't going to engage, then how do we get them to engage? You know, if an email coming from Kfna saying, do you want to do this cool stuff? Do you want to communicate with your neighbors? Gets zero answer. I'm kind of stuck.
I don't know if this is an answer to that question, but in our last committee meeting, we were talking just about the role that Kfna plays. And as I'm looking at number 1 on this list, Sarah, I'm just kind of like, yeah, creating a list of different things that different departments are doing, but also what are different neighborhood associations doing. And I think it also would be helpful to just have a conversation or just maybe like just define what our role with public safety is and how we see KFNA interacting with that, and like what are the objectives of being involved with public safety and how do we want to do that. So I'm just kind of having a foundational problem of like the block contact thing seems really foundational to what the neighborhood association does, but I think the public safety aspect of it is sort of vague and undefined, and it might be helpful to talk about what our role is in public safety and what our objectives are.
And I would say the simplest answer to that, it came out of a conversation earlier this year where we were talking about how community building is community safety. So it doesn't have to be KFNA. That's a person that's connecting you, Brighton, to you, Katie. But like, we don't always have to be in the middle, but it's knowing that those networks are happening between neighbors. It's knowing that if I give you information, Brighton, that you're going to share it with Katie, who's going to share it with Jerome, you know? It's sort of a hands-off, community network. You know, ideally, we would be invited to every block party, but we're not.
I would find it helpful if other people on the board agree, like the block contacts are a place for more investment, to have a little bit of a write-up or summary of just like reminding us all what has been done with the block contacts, and then be able to have some actual like brainstorming and discussion about the idea Josh proposed. I think Sarah's point that it would be really helpful for there to be from staff some goals around it, maybe goals just proposed based on what we have tried and what we think would need. So there's just a little bit more there that we could be grounded in what's already happened, and then have some more specific questions for like brainstorming together.
I'm happy to jump in and take care of the, I mean, do this. I don't care. Is it a subcommittee, or I don't know how you want to handle this. But
I don't know either. Do you want it back at the next board meeting?
yeah, I mean, between now and then, I've got a couple, I want to jump ahead, but on the fundraising piece of it, I mean, ideally, what I'd really like to see us do is leverage these block contacts and building contacts for fundraising. And my intuition tells me to put together, the materials that go together to support this and then a campaign for it. And so I think it's about building engagement, community, and we got nothing to lose, folks. I mean, we have to make some money here. And so this is, unless we're friends with these people, you have to make the ask. And so we've got to figure this out. And so I'm happy to spearhead this piece of this conversation, but we have to build these relationships. And in today's technology world, there's no reason why we can't make this work, but we're going to have to figure out how to do it.
I think it's unclear to me anyway, if we develop, having relationships with block contacts is great, but how does that necessarily help in fundraising? Like, we want them to ask people more, or we we can't just ask the block contacts to donate money.
No, but you have to ask them to do the outreach, right?
Well, but we need to have like something to outreach around, right? I mean, we just sent sort of the general letter, so that was one way to outreach.
We need collateral is what we need. And we need to, that's why I'm asking about strategic plan. I mean, where are we going here? What's the communication? What's the message to these people about what we're doing and why we're here? And what do they expect to get from us, for their donation? And so I don't know where strategic planning is, but once we figure that out, I'm all about creating the collateral. And so I have a couple of resources for that. I'd like to put together some kind of a block captain campaign. I'm going to send Becky out because she's totally fearless. She'll ask anybody for anything.
Money. I like to ask people for money.
I know you do. You're really good at it. So, I'm willing to put this campaign together, folks. I mean,
So knowing that we have a fundraiser in between now and the next board meeting, God, it's actually that soon. I will plan on doing a report on our block contacts for the February board meeting, and we'll add it to the agenda.
Okay. While we're talking about this jump ahead, but I really want some collateral. We need to have some kind of published piece, or, we need to get our messaging down and our communication down about what we do and our value proposition is. We need to be able to roll it off your tongue every time you talk to people. And so I don't know. I've got somebody I'll meet with on Thursday that I think could help us do this, but she lives in the neighborhood. She's a branding expert, but I really think we need an effort here to solidify what we do and why we're here.
But I agree with you though, Todd. I think that at this point, the mission statement of the organization really needs to be looked at.
Yeah. And
it needs to be honed down.
And we have to put this thing in terms of people understand it and they're willing to engage with it. We can't be too abstract when we go about this thing. Building community is the basis of this entire thing. It's not rocket science, folks. We're here to create a better place to live and work.
Do we need to wait until we have fundraising materials to start building our network of block contacts?
Probably not.
Because that kind of feels like, I agree that they could be leveraged for fundraising, but if what we're talking about is trying to create a network of block contacts to talk about public safety or actually offer a service, have Kingfield or KFNA have a impact on people's lives that then they feel safer or feel like, oh, wow, this is something I want to keep around. Is that something that we could start now rather than wait for? Because I don't disagree that if you want them to be handing stuff out or to be, fundraising, that would need to be collateral, but I feel like it doesn't have to wait. Yeah.
I agree.
Okay.
All right. Well, Sarah, I'm all in. You do your report. Let's circle back, you and I, in the next couple of weeks, and I'll share with you what I know. And I'd put together kind of a few ideas in a PowerPoint earlier. I'll recirculate that with you and see if we can kick this thing in the where.
Okay.
All right, moving along to the next agenda item. This is the one that Chris was going to be covering. I'm going to talk briefly about the procedure on taking a position. But really, this is going to be Chris's show in the February board meeting. The executive committee met and talked through the feedback that you all gave during the last couple board meetings. And Chris did put together a planning document, which is in the board pack. The document is broken down into 6 different sections, explaining planning documents and how Kingfield will move forward, when and about what topics we will or won't take positions on and or vote on actions. Like I said, Chris will be presenting in the next board meeting, and we will have some case studies to work through in small groups to make sure we all feel comfortable as a board when it comes to position taking, policy taking, or action-oriented goals. Any questions about this? And again, Chris will be talking a lot more about this next month. All right, hearing none, Sarah's going to give an update on empty bowls, which, like she mentioned, is right around the corner.
It is. So we have a 10-person, probably 8 to 10 person committed planning team. We are moving. I'm sorry, I'm looking at the calendar to see how far away it is. We have moved empty bowls from Martin Luther King Park due to COVID to Butter Bakery. We are planning on doing a kitchen takeover on a Sunday. So Dan has granted us, he's closed. We can use the kitchen. I had a little bit of concern today when I just saw the new vaccine mandate coming through for all eating places. But what we think it will be is as much takeout as dine in. So February 13th is Super Bowl Sunday, so we'll have a whole campaign rolling out starting next week about tackling hunger, and that's the catchiest one I can think of at the moment. And so it's sort of a pregame soup offer. Bowls will be set up outside. People will be taking orders and packing up soup for people to take home. And people who are vaccinated are welcome to come dine inside the restaurant. And then we'll be using Dan's cash register to take donations directly for Nicollet Square, shared with the neighborhood association. So it is a short timeline. We have some donors already in place, a couple for soup, a couple for bread. We're trying to figure out how we can package stuff to go. We feel it's really important to keep the name of Kingfield Empty Bowls alive, even though it will be a very different looking event than the big community dinner. But the idea is that within a 2 to 3 hour window, if people are gathering outside Butter or stopping by Butter, they'll still have a chance to see neighbors that they haven't seen, and run into people, and then to their comfort be able to stand outside and talk with neighbors for this event. So we hope that we will see a good level of neighborhood support at this in-person, probably mostly pick up to go event. So we will be sharing a sign-up sheet probably in 2 weeks with all of you to see how you're willing to be involved, whether that's standing at the door with clipboards, taking people's soup orders, or helping them with bowls, or we'll definitely have a team inside as well, packing up food and talking with people indoors. So,
Sarah, can you tell me how this has worked in the past? Because I don't really know.
in the past, it's a sit-down community dinner in Martin Luther King gym.
Where's the food come from?
The food comes from local, all donated by local, mostly Kingfield, restaurants and bakeries.
And that's true this year too.
It is.
Okay.
It is. We have one ask into a non-Kingfield soup place that actually packages, like makes their soup that's supposed to be great. I haven't tried it, but it's supposed to be great, but it's like frozen. So people could get it for the Super Bowl and bring it home and warm it up. Otherwise, we'll be packing up on site.
Have you heard
Yeah.
from them, Sarah, from Simplest?
I haven't. I'll call them again tomorrow. They had put us like we'll talk to you after the holidays.
Uh-huh.
Put me off, but I can go back to them now.
Does this cost us money? What's this cost us?
This year it might actually cost less. At King Park, we have to pull a permit. So it costs staff time. And at King Park, we have to pull a permit and we buy we buy food like as a central condiment table and paper products for compostable bowls and spoons and stuff.
Okay.
Most of that we have on hand this year for bowls and spoons and stuff that I think we can reuse. And because of COVID, even if we have great soup, we can't have a bowl of shared cheese and sour cream, so we don't have that. And so we are really trying to be careful with my time, with Kenzie's time on staffing. We have a volunteer graphic designer and a team putting in a lot of work.
Okay.
So
Good.
Becky, do you want to add anything?
I don't think so. So the idea of us making any soup is not, we're not doing that then, right? We won't have to go in.
What we took away was in trying to simplify the message of pregame, Super Bowl Sunday, Kingfield Empty Bowls. We took away the pre-order. So
Okay.
we are really gonna just be out in the cold about if 20 people show up or 200 or 2,000.
Okay, so we're not gonna have people pre-order soup.
No, because the idea of like pre-ordering and delivering to people in the neighborhood.
Oh yeah,
is,
delivering,
like,
I think.
so complicated
Right. No, I agree.
that, and then it took away the community aspect. Like you can still sit in your house and someone just gives you something, I was just like, so we went with you have to at least be able to show up outside. You never have to come in. But you can choose your bowls outside, you can place your order, someone will go inside and pack it for you and bring it out.
And then do we still need to ask more places to donate? It's sort of the usual Sun Street butter.
Yep, Sun Street
History.
Butter and Victor's have committed. We've lost a lot of our restaurants that have donated to this in the past. We were looking at doing cookies for desserts instead of other desserts because they're easier to pack to go, so we're figuring it out. But yeah, I need to go back through the list and I haven't done that yet since we met before Christmas.
Okay.
So the ask from the board right now would be in 2 weeks to sign up for shifts for Sunday, February 13th. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Perfect.
And to share social media. So as I say, every time we talk about social media, it means nothing. It doesn't go anywhere if KFNA posts something. It takes every single one of you as that person that people know in the neighborhood to, take the Instagram post and share it and like it and, or Facebook or whatever tool you use, share it.
Any other questions about empty bowls or the ask of the board for this event? Okay, we'll move into community or committee updates. And Katie, strategic planning is up first.
Great. So here's what strategic planning is going to be up to over the next 5 months. This month, we're digging pretty deep into the survey results. I'm going to be making a summary document. I'm going to work with Kenzie on this when she's back to make sure we've both quantitatively and qualitatively effectively pulled together the results of the survey and also the conversations we had as board members and with like partners in the neighborhood. We have a few examples from other neighborhoods who've done surveys recently that are really helpful. We want to be able to share that document publicly with all the people in the neighborhood who did the survey and obviously also with the board. So we aim to have that initial summary at the February board meeting, make sure the board is good with it before we share it with the neighborhood. In March, we're going to, heavily based on the summary of the survey, have a preliminary proposal of mission and vision changes for the board to review. And then we have a vision. I mean, this will be very dependent on COVID stuff, but we have a vision of having a few public spaces in the neighborhood where people can see and engage with some of those proposals, whether we do like dot voting type things where people can put Post-it notes or engage with visuals, probably at coffee shops around the neighborhood in March and April, and then propose that we actually have a new mission and vision to vote on at the annual meeting in May. I'm reflecting that, especially based on our budget conversation, I think it's important to be clear that the directive we've had as a committee for right now has just been pretty focused on the mission and vision. That is a different thing than an organization actually doing strategic planning. It's an important first step because like a plan needs to come from being clear about mission and vision. But I think, I'm just reflecting, we've all said it, we're all clear about it. We have existential questions ahead of us. I'm sort of curious if the board has ever done a retreat before. I personally feel like it feels hard to dive all the way into some of the choices we're going to need to make just in a monthly meeting like this. And also, if anybody's participated in strategic planning processes before, like there's just a bunch of facets of that for us to dig into, not just for the committee to do. And it could be smart for us to want to engage someone external to the board to help facilitate that process, which we've tried and it was very hard to secure in 2020. And we hadn't talked about this as a committee, but I'm just personally reflecting on it as like, that's probably a thing we might want to react to and think about in the winter or spring. Any questions, or if anyone else from the committee wants to add? I guess the last thing I just wanted to say based on the fundraising committee's comments, one, I think that the summary of the survey that we're going to do is going to provide a lot of clarity about information that could be put on fundraising collateral and related to fundraising stuff that happens before May. I don't think you should feel like, oh, well, there's nothing we can do until we voted on that. There's a lot of clarity in the survey. And obviously we know all the events and like activities that Kfna does, and that can be expressed even if we haven't landed the updated mission vision before that. So just wanted to be clear about that.
Thank you, Katie. Any questions about strategic planning and the process or the timeline that Katie laid out?
I don't have any questions, but I would just affirm that I would love to have the time and the space to have a bigger conversation about these big issues facing the organization. And yeah, it feels very difficult to do that on Zoom at a monthly meeting. And, we're in really, really, really difficult circumstances right now. But these are big questions. And I just agree that they deserve more of our time in more of like a working meeting type space than what our monthly meetings tend to be, which is more reporting out, taking votes, things like that. It seems like actually having the time to be able to talk through some of these things, to come up with ideas. I would really appreciate having that.
Thanks, Sarah. Fundraising is up next.
We have not had a committee meeting since before the holidays. But the letter went out, some money came in. Sarah made some special calls on to some of the developers. We have a lot of work to do. We'll meet this month. I'm really leveraging this idea of building on the block captains. We also need to identify if we're going to do some kind of a special event. And so those are our two objectives probably in the short term. And I really want to build out the collateral so we can do this block captain work. I really think we have to build our brand, our mission, vision. And I don't mean the faster we can put together a strategic plan, the better. We have work to do and we got to survive here. And so I feel the pressure. I'm happy to try to make it happen. That's about all I got.
Any questions for fundraising?
No, but Sarah, did it say in the latest budget stuff you put together how much we raised in the with the letter?
It's in there. It's roughly the same. I think it was like 6,000.
1,000.
I was hoping for 10. It's an increase, but it's about the same as we did last year. I would say we have more monthly donors right now, which is a good thing.
All right, and recruitment.
Okay, sorry, I had to answer a call. So we have not met since before the holidays, but I believe, and I'm just looking this in my email, so someone correct me if I'm wrong. I think we talked about this during the December meeting, but the city is wanting to make a uniform neighborhood annual meeting date, and that date is scheduled for May 14th of this year. So I think that's am I right about that, guys? May 14th, right? So that's the date that we're planning on, slotting for the annual meeting. So keep it on your calendars, block it off. We don't know what time, but it's going to be some point during that day. We're not going to do like an all day event. It's going to be, a truncated 2-hour window or something like that. Probably in the afternoon, but there will be more information to come I assume that we'll probably meet this between now and the next meeting. So we'll have more update next meeting.
Thanks, David. And any questions for recruitment?
Wait, did you just say the city wants to put all the neighborhood meetings? And
Yeah,
they're picking a Saturday?
Yeah, is that May 14th is a Saturday, right?
Right.
Yep. So it's the kind of like their neighborhood what is it? The neighborhood plan. One part of it is, I guess, having neighborhood organizations meet on the same date. They're not mandating it, but I think that along with it, they're going to have more. I mean, I don't know if there's anything guaranteed, but the idea that it would be more of a citywide promotion, so we'd get some assistance, I think, in terms of getting people aware of the neighborhood organization around the annual meeting. So it'd just be hypothetically free marketing if we just tie it in. I mean, that would be the dream. So
I would make sure that you keep thinking it might just be a dream.
Yeah.
I haven't seen the city to be super organized to get things out in advance. So
yeah, fair enough.
Any other questions for recruitment? All right, in closing, as we always do, we're going to talk about things that are happening in the neighborhood or things we are excited about. And for this month, Josh, you are up first.
Sarah asked me to talk about my new side gig. There's Pillsbury United Communities has this program called Documenters, where they started in Chicago, I believe, and expanded to some other cities, including recently Minneapolis. They find people in the community to take notes about local public meetings, to spread the word about the important things that are happening on the local level. And I am one of the documenters, and mostly focus on charter commission and redistricting. I basically already did that anyway, so now I sometimes get paid for it. So it's a cool program. If other people are interested in seeing the work they do or interested in doing it themselves, it looks like Sarah posted the link in the chat.
Cool, thanks, Josh. I'm up next. I think, even though it's January, it's still good to reflect, and I thoroughly enjoyed Lighted Up Kingfield this year. Even in the cold weather, we had neighbors out in the street, fires going. It was good to see neighbors be out. So that it made me incredibly happy just to see neighbors, even though it's winter. Brighton, you're up next.
I don't have COVID. That's kind of my only win right now.
We'll take that as a win and happy. Are you out of quarantine and you are now good to go?
Yeah, I got out of another quarantine last week because my sister and her partner were here doing wedding planning and got COVID. So this Monday was my first day out in public again. And now it feels like there's a call every couple of days. And I feel like I don't see that many people. So I basically go to stay home and go to my shop, and that's about it. But I hope everyone else is feeling better, and I hope Chris's family recovers.
Yeah. Katie, you're up next.
The art shanties return to the lake starting this weekend, and there's so many awesome activities, and I hope to see you all out there.
Sorry, can I add? I am doing an art shanty, and there's 4 weekends it's out there. I'm going to be volunteering the closing weekend, but I think it's the 22nd is the kite festival, so that's supposed to be like just a ton of people. You guys should definitely hit that up.
Katie, thank you for posting the link. I'm really excited about this. I'm looking forward to the Lopit stuff coming up as well. So this will be a nice addition to that. Becky, you're up next.
Well, I feel like there's not been much going on in our neighborhood. We usually have stuff that we do. We are going to have a New Year's party, and we decided to cancel it because so many of us have kids leaving for college and we didn't want them to get sick. But then lo and behold, a bunch of people in the neighborhood got COVID anyway. So we should have just had the damn party. So yeah, not a whole lot happening here. I feel finally after, 2 years, I'm starting to feel desperate. Like, okay, enough already.
Yeah, I think everyone's kind of at their COVID peak, no pun intended, right now. L'Oreal, you're up next.
I guess I changed positions with my work. I now will work as like a one-on-one like case manager, and help youth find more permanent housing and kind of like help them like do basic life skills, like getting driver's license, applying for Minnesota benefits and things like that. So I'm pretty excited about that.
That's awesome. And hopefully it's going well in the transition. Sarah Cheetah.
My neighbor across the street is still lighting it up in Kingfield on Monday nights. He's been out there the past, I don't know how many, well, let's see, a couple of Mondays with a bonfire. And so I really appreciate that. I really appreciate seeing that, and hope to, I haven't been feeling great the last couple of weeks, but I hope to join him out there coming up here soon. And if you see a lot of kids around the neighborhood over the next couple of weeks, a lot of school districts are moving back to distance learning, and that is certainly the case with MPS starting Friday through January 28th. All the kids will be back on distance learning for a couple of weeks. So, yeah.
Yeah. I may try to get my block to keep up the Light Up Kingfield as well. I like that. Todd, you're up next.
Life is crazy. I mean, we're healthy over here and happy. We've been laying really low in anticipation of a California trip we have coming up. But I work on a lot of sustainability issues with the realtor organizations. And so we're really looking hard at Minneapolis and how to work hard on the time of sale energy audit requirement and how to make that work for homeowners and new homeowners. What kind of improvements that need to be made to their properties? How do you increase the value and comfort of the property after you buy it and pay for it? So doing a lot of work there. I got to tell you, I heard a couple of reports today. The real estate industry is on fire. I mean, it's not going to, this affordability issue is not going to stop, at least for 3 to 5 years. We're in trouble even if interest rates go up. So there's a lot of affordability issues in the marketplace. I don't know how to solve for this, but it's just going to get worse before it gets better. I don't have good news, but we're out there looking at the market, and hopefully there'll be some new opportunities in the marketplace for affordability. There's a really cool project happening in St. Louis Park. If you haven't seen it, I'll try to find it and send it, but it's affordable housing tied to a 2-story greenhouse where they grow their own food and harness their own energy. It's a really cool project. It's over by the new light rail line just west of Highway 100. So that's all I got.
Yeah, if you can find that, send it out to everyone. I'd be very curious to check that out. I hadn't heard about that. That's really cool.
It's awesome.
Cool. Dave Sertle, you're up. Oh, sorry, David Robbins, you're up next.
That was a nice pump fake there, BJ. No, the big news for me, 2 weeks ago, I finally got the opinion from the Minnesota Supreme Court for a case I'd argued in April, and I won. And now in Minnesota, it is illegal for a cop to expand the scope of a traffic stop unless they have reasonable suspicion of something that's a crime. My client was stopped for something that wasn't a crime, and I made the argument that the Constitution doesn't allow officers to expand stops for things that are non-criminal. And I won 7-0 before the Minnesota Supreme Court. The thing that's most significant about it is, I think, and I don't know how much I want to go into it, but it leads to a bigger argument that I have like a pipe dream of making one day. I talked about it a little bit after Dante Wright was killed, but yeah, this is it's a really, really big win, and yeah, it was awesome. So that was my big news.
That's really cool, and I feel like you've been talking about this case for quite some time since you've been on the board. So it's cool to hear that it's concluded, that you got your results, and it was a 7-0. That's pretty awesome, and the end result is really cool as well. Congrats. Dave Sertle, now you are up.
I will echo my neighbor and fellow board member. That's awesome, David. At this house, it's just, we also don't have COVID. And what I will say, probably the best parts as far as our neighbors are with the incredible amount of snow, and I think I probably said this last month, was just helping shovel our whole block and shovel those who are either have surgery or who have COVID or have to stay in. And it's just been cool to see all the neighbors kind of come out for that and expand past the people just next to your house, and people started traveling more and more houses down. So
Thanks, Dave. And Jerome, you're up next.
Not a lot for me. Not a huge fan of winter, so I tend to bunker up a lot, but I am definitely looking forward to both the art shanties and the Lope It, sort of my 2 days going outside during the entire 5 months of winter or so. So if you see me out there, wave, because that'll be the only outdoor interaction I'll have for the next few months.
It will be good to see you not on a Zoom call. And Sarah Linus Robinson, you're up next.
So I'm wondering if any of you have gotten and noticed the new print Southwest Connector newspaper? Okay, so at least you noticed it. That's good. So I'm working on a communication plan for KFNA that I'm excited about. That will hopefully allow us to get more regular contact in the neighborhood and not be as expensive as our traditional newsletter has been. For those of you that remember, the newspaper, it was that large format, mailed to every house, but a pretty steep price tag. And the last 2 editions I wrote, we threw out because COVID started on one of them and George Floyd was murdered when the second one was ready to go out the door. And so we haven't done a paper for a year and a half, 2 years, almost 2 years. That's crazy. So I'm working on a combo element and looking at doing inserts in the Southwest Connector. So we'll see what that comes to. I'm hoping that people are excited about having a paper back in print. So it's been nice to see.
I definitely think neighbors will appreciate it. I think those that aren't on social media or aren't on the newsletter, I think they would love to hear what was going on in the neighborhood. All right, well, thank you all. That does conclude the meeting for this month. Our next meeting will be before Empty Bowls. It's on Wednesday, February 9th. So we will see you then, if not in committees before that. Have a good night, y'all.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.
Night.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, BJ.